You had like 8 years, right?
Yeah, something like that. It had to have been 8
Because you
years
got how
ago.
much now? Like
A
18?
little over 20. I'm coming up on 21 years. Yeah.
What?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. You're taking all the juicy stuff.
No, I was just dude. All right.
Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B to my right.
What's happening, everyone?
Hello, Benjamin.
What's
And
going
we
on?
also have Benjamin H in the house.
What's up, everybody?
Ben. This is something that Ben and I, Ben B, we've been talking to Ben H about coming on the podcast for
Yes, we.
well over a year. And finally has happened. And I'm excited. I think that it's going to be a good episode. Don't you think, Ben?
Most definitely.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. I've been wanting to do this, but I wanted to do it with the right time and the right topic, and I guess all the stars aligned.
All right. Well, first things first, thank you for tuning in on YouTube. Thank you for listening on the podcast app, whether that be Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, or I think that's it. We're on basically any podcast player that you can find. And on YouTube, obviously, you just search Real Recovery Talk, send it to your friends and family, and, they can listen. And if they hear something that they like or enjoy, they can subscribe, obviously. But most important, send it to people that you think could benefit from this. There's no reason that we can't, just share an episode with somebody. If you know somebody that's struggling with addiction or, might benefit in any way to listen, send it to them. And in the end, if you want to reach out, you can always contact us. What's my email? Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, what we're trying to do here, Ben, is don't say it, I'm going to do it. Turn your mess into your message.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like that, Ben?
That was smooth.
How about you, Ben?
I love it. That's
All
great.
right. Just get a little bit closer up on the mic. There you go.
All right.
So we were just talking a little bit before I hit record, and I want to say that Ben Harrison, Ben H, this is going to be a lot of Bens going on. I've gotten to know Ben, man, for the better part of 10 years now. And I will say this to start. Ben is somebody that from when I met him, the thing that kind of drew me toward, and I know I've shared this to you before. So we used to work at a facility years ago, and Ben had his own office, and, he was a therapist there. But one thing about Ben's office was everything had its place. Very like OCD, like. And I remember you had this book. Remember when you walk into the office door, I think you had a bookshelf right to the right. And there were like candles, like a candle and books on there that were nice and put in place and stuff. And I would just go over there and nudge something out of, and not tell them. And then come back the next day and it's fixed, But no, with that being said, Ben is a great therapist and has up to this point helped, I would venture to say, thousands of people sustain long-term recovery and sobriety. And it's been fun getting to know you. Ben B, how do you know Ben H?
So, in early recovery, I showed up to Oasis Club, which is an Alcoholics Anonymous clubhouse. And specifically, it was a Saturday morning?
I don't know
Sunday
specifically.
morning.
Yeah.
So I believe it was a Saturday morning group that was it may have been noon. I think it was at noon on Saturdays. But I met Ben there. I maybe had a year or two of sobriety when I started showing up to that meeting. It was outside on the patio, but Ben was always chairing. And that was 10 years ago about.
Yeah.
But let me say this about Ben. As far as, obviously he likes things in order, hence the bookshelf stuff. He's really good at helping other people put their life in order. And it's definitely, I have to, from my outside perspective, give credit to the work that he's done on himself. Like seeing how he carries himself, and specifically for me, my first introduction to him in Alcoholics Anonymous, like he walks the walk. The big book talks about armed with the facts about himself. That's why I'm excited about this episode, because Ben's done a lot of work on himself, and that carries over. Like with our groups, it's kind of funny. Like Ben has this reputation. He's a group facilitator for us twice a week. And just as a general consensus, what I've picked up on, every client that starts off with Ben cannot stand him. By the end, they freaking love him. And from my perspective, what that's about is he is so good at helping people see their own truth, which in early recovery we do not like. Don't tell me the truth about me. Please don't. But Ben is just so good at you're very good at reading people is what it is. He knows who somebody is, like almost within the first group, I feel like, just picking up on the energy they put off, their responses. Very, very good at that. He has a gift, but man, he calls people out on their stuff and they hate him for it. But by the end of their stay at Rock, they are like, that man helped me learn who I truly am. You know, so.
All right, enough about Ben.
All right. Yeah, blew
Let's
you
hear
up
from
there.
Ben. All right. Ben, again, appreciate you coming on. Let's start back a little bit. Give us a little bit of a snapshot of your you're born, well, no, you're not born and raised here. Where are you from?
Originally from Massachusetts, a little town called Westport, probably about 20,000 people.
Okay.
Farm country.
So what brought you to Florida? Give us a little bit of snapshot of your using and stuff like that, your addiction. Not a lot, just, you know, I suppose a qualifier of sorts, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So first off, before I start, I just want to thank both of you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Also, thank you both for your kind words, and your friendships over the years have meant a lot to me, both professionally as well as personally. So way back when, in a galaxy far away, in a little town called Westport, Massachusetts, there was little old Ben Harrison. I was born into my mom, my father, and a younger brother by 2 years. What happened was they divorced. To fast forward a little bit, we all lived with my grandparents. They helped raise my brother and I. They helped my mom out. Essentially what ended up happening was I came to Florida because I was expelled in my high school year, 4 months before graduation. And that's how I came to Florida. Came to Florida because mom was relocating here with my brother, and the whole family eventually was going to relocate here. So I had to finish high school here and start my life. And that's what brought me to Florida. But my disease, my addiction took off here.
Really?
Yes. It was more experimental back in, like on the weekends here or there, probably at about 13. The typical 11, I was smoking cigarettes. By 12, I was smoking weed. And then by 13, it was like chasing that on the weekend.
So when you get down to Florida, you finished high school?
I did here.
And what was it? So it was you and your brother and your mom?
Yes, and then eventually the extended my grandparents and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did your addiction look like? You say it took off here. Like, what did that look like for you?
Well, it took off because what happened was I finally came into acceptance of who I am and what I am. And what I am is a gay man. And back at the age of 11, I was suppressing from 11 to 19, suppressing those thoughts, those feelings, those ideas, none of which was the stigma was being put on me. I was bullied in high school. I was bullied in middle school. I was bullied in elementary school. And my name became this, they called it a nickname, but it was Ben Gay. That's what I was called every day in school. So when I was 11 and I'm looking at these pictures, these cards that were in the store of these men on them, I'm immediately attracted to it. And I was like, oh, no. We can never let anybody know that. And I immediately, like in an instant, stuffed that. I say all of that to say that over those years from 11 to 19, that's where my addiction became medicinal. That's where, because all those thoughts and feelings went away. And on some level, I was starting to be accepted socially. I can't tell you that I was comfortable in my own skin, because the reality of the situation was those thoughts, those feelings, when I wasn't under the influence, were there. And when they were there, they were attached with shame. They were attached with guilt. They were attached with not wanting to accept that. So it was this constant internal battle of me and these thoughts and feelings, right? And so suicidal ideations started to plague me. I became very uncomfortable in my own skin. And then when I really, when I guess you could say the drinking escalated a little bit more, when it became every weekend, because, remember, I'm like 15, 16, 17. So the accessibility wasn't as attainable as it was until I got older. So then that's when those thoughts and feelings were really suppressed. So it was like they were gone, right? The world became much more quieter. The volume, if you will, turned down. So when I came here, and I say that my addiction took off, at 19 was when I decided, you know what? Nobody knows me here. I'm going to just be myself. And so a coworker suspected that I was gay, even though I didn't even have any, that was the furthest thing from my mind. And he said, "You're gay. I want you to know that I know. And when you're ready to talk about it, I'm here for you." That guy changed my life, because I went home that day, and for the first time, somebody built a bridge and said, "Hey, I'm here if you walk across." And that's what I did. I came out to him, and that gave me an opportunity. It introduced me to a whole new world. I started going out to clubs and bars, socially accepted. I thought I had, quote unquote, arrived, as they say, not to sound cliche, but that's what had happened. And very quickly, I found other dry goods and substances, cocaine. Fast forward a little bit, and then I was doing crack by 21. So so here I am, 19, out and about, and this was all here in West Palm Beach. So by 21, I'm smoking crack in back alleyways. My disease had accelerated that fast. So by that point, too much, as they say, too much shit happened way too quickly. So that was the only drug that I decided, you know what, we got to slow things down. So things came back to some sense of a balance, if whatever you want to call that, considering that my addiction was still there, because I was still drinking and still dabbling with cocaine. But now we're into the mid-90s, if you will. And in the mid-90s, ecstasy became a big thing. And that's where, if you will, the gasoline really poured on the addiction.
I want to pause you there real quick, because I want to go into a couple of things that you said. One being this man, when you moved to West Palm, that kind of gave you the
courage.
The courage is a good word to come out as being a gay man. He saved your life. So question one, what do you mean by that? And then the second thing that I want you to talk about, and this is just in my mind, he saved your life in the sense that he gave you the comfort of being able to come out, but you didn't know what was in store for you in terms of your addiction. Because he saved your life from the suicidal ideations and the stuff like that, gave you the comfort of coming out, but little did you know that it was going to lead you down this path of addiction and stuff like that, which is ultimately, killing yourself all over again, just in a different way. I guess let's just navigate that a little bit.
Sure, exactly. So when I say he helped save my life, it was mainly he gave me the courage to be able to be me as a gay man, right? And I didn't understand, like, here I am at 19 doing that, right? And the world then was vastly different, right? This was in 1990. We were around the cusp of sexual revolution. HIV and AIDS were very predominant. There was like a lot of social things going on. To be gay, to be a gay man, to be LGBTQ, that phrase even changed over the years. So it was just LGBT. That was it. And that's what it was. And these different cultures and things. So there was a lot to learn, right? I had no idea what any of that was. So I was a kid in a candy store, right? He didn't introduce me to the drugs or the alcohol because the way I see it, that happened all the way back in Massachusetts. It was already there. It was just waiting for the fertilizer, right? And the opportunities. So the opportunities that came when I started going out to these clubs and bars and different social settings, things became available and I was introduced to things. And to be quite frank, I say it now, and it was the same thing then. I'm an equal opportunist when it comes to mood and mind altering substances. I may enjoy alcohol and cocaine, but if you put it on the table and offer it to me, I'm going to do it, right? And so I had always had this desire for cocaine. To fast forward a little bit, the social settings and the acceptance that came with that and the inclusion, that's what I really would like to kind of amplify, is there was this sense of belonging. There was a sense of being accepted for the first time on a real sense amongst peers that I knew who were like me, right? I don't know if they were alcoholic or drug addict, but I could tell you that they were definitely gay. And that was a sense of, I guess you could say, I found a tribe, you know?
I could see that, because even myself, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and looking back on it, moving to Florida exposed me to so many different things that I had never been in contact with.
Yeah.
Gay people being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just never, I'm sure they were there, but I never knew any.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did, then I didn't know they were gay or whatever. And I was friends with everybody, but it was, so the culture thing, and Jewish people, that was the other thing that I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. I grew up in this small, just, Christian town, farmland, yada, yada, yada. And I come down here. I never heard of what copping drugs was. I never knew what the hell that meant. Mm-hmm. The LGBTQ community didn't exist. Mm-hmm. If it did, I didn't know about it. And Jewish people, that was, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And, as I listen to you, you're reminding me of a lot of things. I don't want to get controversial too much, but I will say this. They were very little, they were very, in my elementary school and middle school, there were no one of any other race for some reason. Right? I didn't get exposed to different races until I went to high school, which was in 2 towns over. And the way that it worked was we could choose what high school we wanted to go to. We'd go to the local one in town. But if you wanted to go to a private one, you had the opportunity. And that's what I did. And that's when I started getting exposed to other different races, different colors of, black, brown, and yellow, and up until then, I think to some degree, I was just like socially inept a little bit up until I started getting exposed to different cultures. There were cultures like, don't get me wrong, different nationalities, but that was about as about as far as that.
Same exact here. I mean, yeah, we had Italians, and you knew the people that were German and the Irish and stuff like that, but. The people that I went to kindergarten with were the same people that I graduated high school with.
Exactly.
And in my 12 years, I think we probably had maybe 5 to 8 black kids in the whole entire, I'm talking from 12 years. You know, that's just the way that it was.
And then with that being said, like you said, if there were LGBTQ people at that time, I didn't know it because no one really talked about it because there was a different generation then. We were not socially accepted. So there was a lot of quote unquote in the closet. And if you knew, it was because, oh, you know, quote unquote, John down the street, you know, he's got a friend, that's his friend, quote unquote. It never was referenced as that's his boyfriend, that's his lover, that's his significant. Those terms I did not hear until I came to Florida. So there was a lot of social shock, cultural shock when I came to Florida. And some of it was good and some of it was bad, but it was all, I think it was necessary for my growth.
It's developmental.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to go through these things. And Ben B, I want to hear from you, though, because you're born and raised here.
Yeah, I'm born and raised here. For me, it's literally the opposite of what you all are saying. Like, I had to be a chameleon out the gate with so many different cultures down here. And that was a big part of my struggle is I never personally felt accepted because you know, if there was a different group, I'm like, oh, I'm not a part of them. And I looked at them as superior and myself inferior. And I was constantly trying to like, well, how do I get accepted by this group and that group? And then I found myself like a nomad, you know, and going back to like tying in the drugs and alcohol, like you called it fertilizer, I believe. You know, if you think about it, for me, you know, you talked about the ecstasy. The rave scene down here in South Florida was huge and that's about the same time, late 90s, early 2000s is when I was doing all that. And those experiences on drugs such as MDMA, ecstasy, etc., you're having experiences with people where your serotonin levels are heightened, the oxytocin, the dopamine. And those drugs were, you know, they helped me to build relationships. And therefore, like, I had this false sense, that idea that, like, that was bringing me closer to people. But it did both. You know, it brought me closer to people and gave me experiences. But at the same time, then over the course of time when I didn't have it, I felt isolated and further alone. It was all a mirage. Yeah, you know,
for sure. And you know, and it's funny because as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, you know, it was within. So you have culture in society, right? And then you have culture within the homosexual community, right? And then you have culture within the lesbian community. And then you have culture within the bisexual community. And then you have culture within the trans community. So there's these subcultures to the bigger, underneath the bigger umbrella, the umbrella being LGBTQ, right? And then you got all these other different cultures. So there was a lot that I had to learn. It was constant just living and learning and experiencing through all of that, right? And all the while, I'm feeling a part of. I'm feeling like I'm arrived. And the addiction underneath and behind the scenes is progressing, as they say, slowly, right? Life was good. All the thoughts of suicide had gone away. All those feelings of inadequacy had gone away. I'm becoming successful. I've got friends, right? I couldn't come out where I was back home because it didn't feel safe. It just didn't. With the bullying and with the constant harassment, and remember, this was the 80s. That was a totally different time frame back then. We didn't have the outlets that we have here. And to the earlier point that Tom and I were making, that town was so far, it was almost as if it was so far removed from the city, right? So it wasn't until I went to a city, and even though I think Palm Beach County is not necessarily a city of sorts, but it certainly was not a little hodunk country town where there was one gas station and et cetera, you know, so it was vastly different. With that being said, I think here there was a level of, there was an invitation, number one, to talk about it. And for the first time, somebody reached out and said, I see you. And to be seen that way that's why I said it changed my life, because for once, and deep down inside, I finally had an opportunity, and I realized that I had that opportunity. So as the disease progressed, I'm going to fast forward more to life getting good into different relationships, whether they be friendships or significant with significant others. All the while, here's this addiction, right? And I'm under this total delusion that life is great. And for the most part, it was. I had my own place. The bills are paid. I've got the dog. I've got relationships. I've got money in the bank. And I have this quote unquote, I hate the word normal, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better phrase. It was just a sense of normalcy, whatever that was. And then you fast forward through to the last 2 years of my addiction. And that was the most miserable, because what was once this great thing, this comfortable thing, this had become, there I was again, but this time it was in darkness, despair, and suicidal thoughts had come back, but not for the same reasons. The suicidal thoughts had come back because of the misery and the depression and the sense of loneliness. Because you talk about the chameleon, at some point, okay, I had pulled myself away from the LGBTQ community and submerged myself into, I'm going to use political terms, but like a heterosexual community. Because in my mind, I was like, you know what? I can be gay and I can still have friends with heterosexuals. I don't have to just be gay and hang out with gay people. So this is where this confusion came. But I didn't know necessarily what I was doing then, and I found that out later, and I'll touch on that. So I kept these two groups of friends separate. And with one set of friends, I was doing all these other substances. But with another set of friends, I was only doing cocaine and alcohol and weed. They didn't know that I was getting into meth at this point. And comments were being made like, wow, you're really looking emaciated. You're like dropping weight. You look sickly. Are you okay? And of course, there was such a stigma back then about, well, are you HIV? And no, I'm really healthy and I always am safe. And I never once wanted to say, well, I'm getting involved with meth. You want to do meth with me? It was like my own little precious, if you will, right? My own little secret. So essentially, there was a sense of confusion developing now because the chameleon, here I am running around with skinheads and we're going to bonfires and keg parties out in the woods. And I'm thinking this is great because now I'm tapping into my masculine side. Because now, again, I'm thinking, wow, well, this is what society wants. We have to tone down the gayness and turn up the masculinity. And I'm like, wow, now I'm thinking I can be gay and I can be masculine. It doesn't have to be an and/or thing. Because I started buying into the lies of what society kept saying about homosexuality, whether it be in the news, in the books, in the magazines, that, oh, you've got to fit a certain box. You got to be a certain way. You can be gay, but you can't be too loud, you see? And all the while being spoon-fed that, but not really knowing the magnitude of what that was going to cause in years to come.
I talk about this a lot. When somebody gets rolling, and I can cut this out if need, but no, I don't think I will.
No, don't.
Part of being the host is like you have to think of questions as they're talking.
Yeah.
But in this instance, like I'm so tuned into what you were saying that like I don't know.
Okay, so let me continue. So I'll tell you what that led me to.
Okay, yeah.
So what that led me to was essentially the quote unquote bottom, right? That we all talk about in our active addiction. I had a failed relationship. I started finding out about codependency. I became very codependent on this person. You could even say in some degree within my sickness, I was borderline obsessed with this guy, right? And I became, anytime I saw him out, I got physical with either him or his significant other, because the anger that I had deep down inside for the betrayal came out. And so that meant, let's pour on more drugs. Let's pour on more alcohol, right? Alcohol and drugs are a drug. They're interchangeable for me. Long story short, there was my bottom. My bottom came, there was a DUI. I'll say that. There's a bunch of other, and with that, it was a felony DUI, and I went off. I knew where I was going. I stayed medicated throughout that whole time, waiting for the sentence. I go to jail. While I'm in jail, I use that system like I do everybody and everything else in my addiction. I didn't know that at that time. So there's a lot about what I shared just this morning that I came later on. They were like puzzle pieces that I was able to put together. So loop it around to, I'm on felony probation. I violate. I was getting ready for early term. And it was at that point that I'm facing 5 years prison. Okay. And my lawyer says, you got to go to treatment. And I was, can we cuss on here? Yeah. All right. So I was like, fuck no, I'm not going to no treatment. I'll just go on the lamb or something. Right. And so.
Go on the what?
The lamb.
What's that?
It's just a slang term meaning I'll just go on the run. Oh, and so I was like, I don't even know what I was thinking, but in my mind, I thought I was somebody, right? Like most of us do in our addiction. And I was like, how far do you really think you're going to go, dude? Is the conversation. So I was like, all right, you know what? Sign me up. I could go. I need a vacation. So could my mind. So could my body. And that was the premise of how I went to treatment. And I get there and seeds are planted, and I'm doing therapy for the first time of any kind, right? Not only is this education, but there's this education on the disease concept, right? But I'm actually doing therapy on some deep-seated stuff that I had never unpacked, okay? But the acutity was the addiction. So that was the focal point, right? Go on, I go to halfway, charges are dropped for the violation, and I was not expecting that. I had been dabbling with AA. I had a sponsor in name only, okay? Didn't really want to be sober because it was more about saving my face and not my ass, and that summed that up. But when those charges were dropped, I was at a crossroad. It was like, okay, what are you going to do? And metaphorically, on one shoulder, it was the disease saying, let's go. It's time to celebrate. You've done everything. You've dotted the I's and crossed the T's for all these people. Now you can just let loose. And on the other side, it was, yeah, but you never felt this good before. For the first time, without a mood or mind-altering substance, the world was not loud. It was at a nice volume. And I was comfortable in my own skin, and what was going on between my ears was still kind of wonky, but it wasn't as bad. And I was like, okay, maybe I need more of that. So I just went to a meeting and I never looked back. Let me fast forward from the year 1 to year 3. Year 3 in my recovery became a whole transformation, literally. This is even beyond. So the steps, I think, in my first year were like triage. It was like, get in, let's get all that stuff off. Let's work out those resentments. Let's find out my part. Let's make amends. And there was this one amends that was still illuminating out there, and that involved the accident that I had, which initially, I can't say it wasn't the catalyst, because the catalyst was the violation. But it was the catalyst in the sense of the introduction that started the process of my journey.
Is the accident where you got your DUI?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So to speed that up a little bit, a couple of failed relationships, one with my sponsor, one with a sponsee at the time, and another with a significant other. All were happening around the same time. And I injured my back and got into this, I'll cut it short, but basically I ended up doing chiropractor and Reiki therapy. And next thing you know, I'm finding out about the energies that we hold within our chakras, and we could do a whole nother talk on that. But essentially, I'm going to just get to this point. What happened there was that I was containing this unresolved emotions. Okay. And so I go off to therapy, and this is where the real work for me began.
This is at 3 years.
This is at 3 years, and I got a new sponsor, and I got involved in the steps again, concurrent with doing. I stayed in therapy for 3.5 years because what I learned was that I had an unresolved trauma that I had never. If you had told me, let me tell you what it was. So the therapist asks me, give me a timeline and include what was your first homosexual experience? And I told her very matter-of-factly, well, I was age 4, blah, blah, blah. And he was 12 and la, 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 la. And he was a friend of the family. And she says, because I just reported it, right? There was no thought, no feeling with that. She said, can we go back? I said, sure. She said, you were 4, he was 12. And it was as if time suspended there for the very first time. And here I was at 30 years old, coming to terms with this unresolved trauma that I never knew I had. Or if I did know it, it was certainly way back in an archive, somewhere locked in a closet. Way, way, way back there. What I ended up learning through my therapy was many things. Did deep-seated inner child work, trauma work. And what I came to learn was that a term, and what it was internalized homophobia. That was what I had. And here I was at 30 years old, coming to terms, looking at these things, feeling these things, truly for the very first time, right? And I said to her when I heard that term, I was like, I'm not homophobic. I love being gay. I'm out. I've been out since I was 19, blah, blah, blah. I have gay friends. I'm a part of the community. I've done service work in the community. And, I accept homosexual. She goes, what you're failing to realize is deep within yourself, you are homophobic. You are insecure with the fact that you are a homosexual man. And so this is what she read to me. Internalized homophobia occurs when a person is subject to society's negative perceptions, intolerance, and stigma toward people with same-sex attraction. They then turn those ideas inward, believing that they are true, and experiencing self-hatred as a result of being a socially stigmatized person. And let me tell you guys, that right there was transforming, because I can tell you that even though I was out, even though I had gotten sober at this point and had all those life experiences there was a lot of fun. All of it together underneath it all, even though by this point I'm 3 years sober and I'm loving being sober, but I know that I got work to do, hence why I'm in this woman's office, this therapist. She was right. She was right. There was, even after doing the steps, there was still this uncomfortability in my own skin. The only difference between then and at that point, then being in that time frame, let me say then, was prior all the way back to Massachusetts, right? And at that time, the only difference at that time at 3 years was that I wasn't using any drugs or alcohol to mask that, to anesthetize that, to escape that. It was, the reality was, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. I'm still insecure. I'm still buying into how society wants to put me in this box, put this label on me, right? And that label, that box, no matter what social circle I put myself in, I'm bringing that insecurity. I am saying that when I walk into a group, at this time in my life, because I've done work on this, so this is no longer a current issue, but for anyone out there, this is for you. That no matter what social circle, whether it be the doors of AA, whether it be a group therapy, whether it be bowling with friends from AA, whether it be my own family for a holiday dinner, I'm bringing this stigma with me. And what I'm doing, and what I did do, and I didn't know that I was doing, was that I was projecting what these people were thinking about me as a gay person. That, yeah, they're laughing in my face, and that's what they're doing, but they're not. In other words, they're laughing at me, they're not laughing with me. We're not truly having a sense of community. It's just because this is what they have to do. Because we're all in AA. Or we're all in the same sponsorship family, right? Or we're all in the same home group. And so it just set this tone that affected the quality of my relationships. There was always a sense of, I can't trust you, right? And it all stemmed from that bullying, from that abuse. And then there were things, so what happens with that, right, is that the way it was explained to me, and as a therapist, I've come to learn even deeper on this, is that I created a negative core belief about myself that I transferred to everybody else. So I created a whole stage, if you will, seemingly without knowing, that it was always people against me, never really giving people the chance, because I felt I needed this wall between me and you.
A wall you didn't even realize you had.
Correct. A wall that way back when, brick by brick, I built because I thought I needed it, but in my recovery, I thought I took it down. But it was still there. I guess you could say, you ever see, in Star Trek when they say shields up, and it's this hologram shield before they go to the planet, whatever they're going? That was essentially how I was walking through all my relationships. Shields up. I could see you, you could see me through the shield because it was transparent, but not enough for you to really see me because I didn't want you to see me.
You know what I find fascinating about this? I'm putting the puzzle pieces, the Ben Harrison puzzle pieces together, and it's very clear to me now, after you shared all this, that you had an experience with your therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I see now, I'm like, this makes sense. What I was talking about in the beginning, that transposes over to your style of the way that you do group therapy. That's 100%. My perception. Trying to get people to see what they can't see themselves.
Yes.
The negative core belief that you didn't even know was there.
Correct. And let's talk about this real quick. I was being called Ben Gay every day, and I didn't even know what the fuck gay was when I was 11 years old. Prior to 11, because it was only at 11 that I recognized that there was truth. And do you know why I didn't come out when I was 11? Because I was bullied. And I was already being made to believe that I was a defect and that I wasn't accepted. So naturally, I wasn't going to come out because I didn't feel safe to come out. So I suppressed it. And that just set this tone and stage for years to come. Years to come. And this is, I'll just be in way of full transparency. I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I hope that I'm reaching people. I even put myself in heterosexual sexual situations to try to ungay myself because that was the last thing I wanted to become at that time in my life. So I bought the Kool-Aid, if you could, for lack of a better phrase, the Kool-Aid metaphorically, quote unquote, being what society thought I should be. And hence, that was the birth of my internalized homophobia from adolescent to young adult to full adult. by the time I was 30, sitting in that therapist's office. And it really, looking back, not now, because now, you know my motto, you know me well enough to know, I have no fucks given. What you see with me is what you get. And I try to explain that to a lot of the clients and sponsees. And you're right. And it's because of the work I've done that the necessity of being comfortable in your own skin, regardless of what you've done or who you've become and what you are, should never, ever play a role in who you are. Period.
That's why we say so often that, like, people that don't understand addiction are just so quick to say, why can't you just stop? Why can't you see what you're doing to your life? You see the relationships that you're destroying. You see the chaos around you. Isn't that enough for you to just stop? And in your case, and in any case that I've ever dealt with, myself included, a lot of times that chaos doesn't even hold a candle to the chaos that we've gone through. Mm-hmm. Which, if we're comparing apples to oranges here, I'd rather wreck my cars. I'd rather get my DUIs. I'd rather push you away. I'd rather do these things than have to face all the other stuff that I've gone through the past 20 years of my life.
Oh, yeah.
And when we're talking, and the three of us sitting here, when we're talking to people that are not educated or don't understand this, these are the lenses that we want people to try and look through. Mm-hmm. We all use the onion analogy. Mm-hmm. We're peeling layers back day by day, year by year. In your case, you had 3 years of continuous quality sobriety. And it wasn't until year 3 that this other transformational moment, happened for you. And so there's no finish line to this. I've had a few transformational moments. Obviously, when my children were born, I got married. My dad having a stroke was another one. These things that happen. They happen to us and they make us who we are today. But your story, and we've known each other for a long time, and I never knew it to that capacity. And I'm super grateful that you shared all that. And I hope that, the listeners can, because a lot of listeners are families and loved ones and friends, that they don't understand it to the capacity that we do.
Yeah.
And that's one of our biggest messages is, like, there's more to this.
Yeah, and let me just say this, like, I used to hate when I was first coming around hearing that, I'm grateful that I'm a grateful alcoholic or drug addict. That was so cringeworthy for me that I can't tell you today how valuable that statement has become for me. Sitting here today, and I can honestly tell you, thank God I found drugs and alcohol, because had I not, I think I really truly would have blown my brains out. That's just absolutely no bullshit. Yeah. Because it was a solution that was a solution for a while. And because for this kid, this gay kid that didn't know he was a gay kid, who wanted to become something but couldn't feel safe in a world, the drugs and the alcohol drowned all of that out. For a while.
You.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to touch on that, because you were saying to the people that don't understand. The message we get as kids growing up is alcohol and drugs will kill you.
Correct. Yep.
But my first experience with alcohol and drugs, it saved me. Mm-hmm. You touched on the suicidal ideation. I had that all through high school. Mm-hmm. And had I not had alcohol and drugs at the time, what would I have done with that suicidal ideation?
Facts.
Right? So I had the opposite experience that we're taught. It actually played a part where it saved my life, but now I'm stuck in it. I can't get out of it, the negative consequences of it. And unfortunately it backfires. But going back to what you were talking about, being a grateful recovered alcoholic drug addict, I am grateful I went through all that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change any of it. It's made me who I am today. You know, no way would I take any of it back.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, did it suck going through it? 100%. Would I have loved to have spared my little kid from all of that? Yeah, but if I would have been able to have the hindsight and fast forward and predict the future, I would have been able to tell my adult self, tell my younger self, hey, it's truly going to be okay, and you're going to be a pretty fucking amazing person from years to come. But you don't know what you don't know until you know, right?
I wanted to ask something. We have a lot of similarities timeline wise, because at 3 years was like, if I had to name a year, year 3 to 4 was probably the best year of my sobriety.
Yeah,
because of the transformation that happened. So in my groups in particular, the last couple of weeks, it's been coming up a lot where clients say to me, the young ones in particular, the ones we have here that are 19, 20, 21, and they're actually doing the work, so I give them credit. However, they're saying, I don't want to have to do this forever. I don't want to go to a meeting every day of the week or a few times a week for the rest of my life. My question for you, Ben, is with how 20 plus years?
God willing, this year will be 21.
Nearly 21 years of sobriety. And this is what I see. I see Ben, he always has sponsees. He has grand sponsees.
Yeah. I even have great sponsees too. And I just say that because that's just the legacy of what they done, right?
For sure.
I don't take credit for that. That's what they've done. But that's the message of AA, just working through people's lives.
So my question for you, for anybody bringing that up, that they're afraid that this is like a sentence, right? What are you getting out of continuing to stay as involved as you do? Because from my perspective, you work in this field, you could just show up and do these groups, and I've been involved with recovery today. What is it? Why?
Wow, that's a really good question. And what do I get? Well, first off, let me back up and say this. I relate to those people.
Yes, me too.
I relate to them 100% because, as I said earlier in this discussion, I didn't want what was being offered to me. I just wanted to save my face, not my ass, right? When that shifted, and for the first time, I had the comfortability in my skin and the circus between my ears had left the building, I couldn't, no drug or alcohol could ever give me that, right? At least organically, right? So what I always say when it comes up in my groups is I disclose a little bit of that. I snapshot that for them. And then, because I want them, I want to get on a human level with them, right? And then I say this. You don't have to worry about the rest of your life because none of us are really guaranteed the rest of our life. But what we are guaranteed is right here, right now. So just for today, just for this hour, I'm going to stay sober. And if you have to reset that in the next hour, you say the same thing again. And you just, it becomes a just for today mentality. Because while I say I have 21 years, for me, it's still one day at a time. And that's not to sound cliche. That's just the facts. I have a very, very clear understanding that my disease wants me dead. And every day I wake up with untreated alcoholism and drug addiction. And I have to condition my mind to accept the fact. And I did it today. I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs. And I need your help to stay sober because I can't do it alone. And that's how my step one becomes an action step. It's not a one and done because, to the point that you and I are making, it's truly one day at a time. So I have to reset each day. So I tell them it's just for today. Don't worry about tomorrow. You don't even know where you're going to be. You may not even be in this treatment center tomorrow. You may not even be on this earth, God forbid. And that's just the reality. Crazy things happen, but just for today, I'm going to stay sober.
That's a good way that makes sense because a lot of times when we do develop these, Ben and I have over 12 years, you have 21 years, you get to a point to where, like, I'm with Ben on this. I'm with Ben B on this, Ben H. I do think that you could step away from AA for a period of time.
But I wouldn't do it effectively. I wouldn't be able, in my clear conscience, walk through this door of rock and sit down and do group, knowing what I know about what I've done, and then try to carry a message.
Right.
I have a conscience today that doesn't let me get away with shitty behavior, much the less deceit. Right? Because that would be deceitful. Here I am trying to help people who are fragile, right? And emotionally raw. And I'm going to take their emotions and help process that with them and create a space for them. But they're doing it organically, and I'm doing it in a manipulative, deceitful way. I would leave here feeling literally like shit.
I think you would feel more hypocritical.
Oh,
I don't
100%.
think your motives and stuff are 100% pure.
Would they be pure? Because and for me, and why I say that, right, is it would shift from me wanting to just help people. And yeah, I get a paycheck doing it, but that's not the primary. And my clients know, and I tell them all the time, and I say this because every time I meet a new client, right, I'm in the business of helping people save their life. So that's become a motto of mine, right? So I wouldn't be doing it with a clear conscience, because deep down inside, yes, I would be hypocritical, but then it would shift from wanting to help people to just give me a paycheck.
Right.
And I don't ever want to be a person in this field who's just collecting a paycheck.
Well, and I think that proves, to your level of integrity and wanting to help people. Where I was going with that is, and I agree with everything you said, but when you get to a certain point of sobriety, and there's no timeline on that, there's no, hey, when you get to steps or year 6, you go from 7 meetings a week to 2. There's nothing like that. But myself, I'll just reference myself. There was a period of time in my sobriety where I wasn't going to meetings, probably from year 4 to year 5.5. I could count on 2 hands how many meetings I went to. And I was okay. The thing is that, are you operating at your fullest potential?
That part.
And I think that's where, like you and how involved you are with sponsees and everything that you do for the recovery community, it's not so much, I think for you, or if I were to speculate, I don't know that I wouldn't be worried about you relapsing. I would just be worried about you could go back into that mental state, because now you're not, what's the saying? You give what you've been given, or something like that,
I'll if I can comment on that.
Yeah.
Because this has come up in like casual conversations over the years, and we do like these hypotheticals. Sometimes it's not intentional. It just kind of happens in the conversation, right? And it's like, I know for me, I'm not going to be like this guy that goes out for like 30 minutes and be like, oh shit, oh my God, I'm just going to drink and come back and be like, okay, here's my white chip. No, for me, it's going to be, as soon as that alcohol hits, it's going to be, okay, where's the cocaine? Because those two things for me have become so interchangeable for me. I can't do one without the other. I've tried, and it just doesn't feel the same. It's like those two things are like Cheerios and milk, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I say that to say this, that's going to set off a whole run, right? And it's not going to just be a little half a gram. It's going to be like, let's just go full throttle, right? With the 8 ball. And then I don't even know where that's going to take me after that.
Crack
right, and the whole thing, right.
Then a missing persons report on Ben Harrison. And
see,
and probably me becoming so reckless because there was such a tone of irresponsibility with my drinking. Here I am getting expelled from high school. should have been the tone, right? That should have been a red flag for me way back when. Smoking pot in study hall, the nuns didn't like that too much. You got to go, right? To a DUI where there was an injury, right? To me, like that already set this tone. Like I'm pretty reckless.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I asked the question. Ben and I are very much cut from the same cloth when it comes to like our program.
Uh-huh.
I'm at the point, and when I asked, I assumed, and I'm right. Let's just call it what it is. That like at this point, Ben probably couldn't live without, just like I can't, without continuing to go to meetings, do that service work, stay involved. I wouldn't want to know the dry Ben Harrison.
I wouldn't want to know him either. And you know, this is something that I've noticed a lot lately. There's been a lot of people who 5 years ago are no longer around.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, not because they've relapsed, they suddenly feel they don't need to do meetings anymore. I bump into them at grocery stores. They're still alive. Hey, how are you doing? Oh, yeah, I just don't go to meetings anymore. Meanwhile, they're sitting there with a baby in the carriage. They got a beautiful life. And I'm like, where's the gratitude? You know, let's not forget where you came from and how you can lose what you have if you don't maintain what you've been blessed with. There seems to be a disconnection there, right? And I've seen that it's been a theme. I can make a laundry list of people's names who are doing just that. And it's like, and I've thought about it. I'm like, why do I, at almost 21 years of sobriety, still go to meetings? 1, 2, why do I still sponsor? And I don't have a legitimate answer for that other than I know I'm not on a credit. This isn't a credit system. You know, like go back to that just for today mentality. I think is there a level of fear? Well, some people could debate that and say, oh, well, Ben Harrison's still living in fear. No, I'm not living in fear. I just have enough common sense to recognize the totality and the reality of what would happen, right? And I don't want to gamble that. I don't want to gamble that.
It's the risk versus reward.
Correct. And the reward that I've been receiving for almost 21 years far outweighs what a line of cocaine or an 8-ball will eventually do, right? It just, yeah, like I said, it would be synthetic versus organic. And what I'm receiving and have been receiving has been organic.
So we're over an hour. We can have a part 2, but we need to wrap this one up.
Okay.
Ben, any final thoughts? Ben B.
Yeah, there's too much there. We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Okay.
For sure.
I agree, because there's a lot of things that we can cover and discuss, and
there's also so much that, like, because of our personal relationship and professional relationship, that I know about Ben that he has to offer the podcast.
yeah.
I would love to come back,
yeah.
and it's been an honor. I want to thank you for the invite. You guys have been trying to get me to do this for over a year, as it was said, and I kept putting it off, and
Now you wonder why, right?
well, yeah, and you know, like I said, when you came downstairs a couple weeks ago, and you were kind of doing your Tom Conrad thing that you do, and I was like, you know, sending me a pop shot, and I was like, yeah, but the topic, like, I need a prompt, right? I can't just go up there and go freestyle. And divinely, it just kind of hit me, and it was like, you know what? I got it. And I want to be, and that's why I wanted to talk. I mean, yeah, I talked about my story, but I talked about my story with internalized homophobia. And my final thought on that is, if you are a person who is a member of the LGBTQ community, I want you to know that there is always a place for you at the table. You never have to conform to what society wants you to be. I did that for so long, and it limited me. If you are a professional in this field, I hope that you have enough desire to want to learn about that. So when that person, that LGBTQ person, comes through your door, you know him or her for who they are and you can recognize it, so you can be a bridge for him or her so that they can start living without having to live in the stigma of what society wants them to be. Period.
Can I say one more thing to that? Just so people, I like providing evidence.
Mm-hmm.
My very first sponsee was gay.
Mm-hmm.
I currently have sponsees that are gay that I've had a relationship with for years, who are some of the most important people in my life. I'm a straight man, and I just wanted to throw that out there because the recovery community is so welcoming. Like, you know, to Ben's point, like, show up.
Yes.
We are people in recovery are you judge yourself more than we judge you.
And that,
hands down,
100%. And hence why I limited myself, because of my self-judgment. And I didn't know that that's what I was doing. Plus, I was my own worst enemy, you know? I bought the lie of the bullying. I bought the lie of sobriety, that I'm defected, that I'm broken, that I'm damaged goods. And when you add drugs and alcohol to that, that was confirmed tenfold, because now I'm demoralizing myself through my addiction. So guess what? Oh, all of those people must be right. I am an inherently fucked up person, because now I've got evidence to support it. Before, it was just speculation based on third-party information. And God, what a crazy wonky place to be, right?
Yeah. Well, Ben, I think this was fun.
I thought it was great.
It was.
Yeah.
Opened my eyes too. You always learn something, you know?
Well, this is why we should always be talking with people,
Yeah.
right? This is how we learn from each other's experiences. And yeah, talking is so important.
Yes,
I
it
just
is.
gotta say this. We share a trauma too. I was called Ben Gay nonstop.
Were you?
Really?
Wow.
It's like probably every Ben on the face of the planet. So
Probably.
can I process it with you later?
For sure.
I was called Thomas the Train. All right. Well, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. And in the end, if you'd like to contact us, you can reach out. Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And in the end, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.